Okay, so welcome everyone to the programs portion of the Evolve Leadership Conference. This one is about reimagining programs, and we are going to have it set up like a town hall, if you will. Vivian from AAF Greenville, John Howard from AAF Charlotte, and Hugh Firebog from Triangle AdFed will be moderating today, and kind of hoping that this is really a conversation, because we're starting this year like no other AAF year has started before, and we want to kind of share ideas and hear what the other clubs are doing. Obviously, John knows what Charlotte's doing, and Vivian's going to get an idea of Greenville. Hugh can speak on the Raleigh-Durham area, but we really want to get an idea of what all of our clubs are thinking. And even if an idea just comes to you, we want to hear it. So with that, I will let our speakers take it from here.
Okay, thank you guys. Thank you, Danielle, for that nice intro. So like Danielle said, this is, a kind of space for us to talk about our ideas and really brainstorm together. So if we're going to try and let everyone speak, but I'm going to try and keep it to about 6 or 7 minutes per slide so we can cover each section. But we can definitely do more questions at the end. So if your question doesn't get answered, just bring it up at the end. So let's get started. First topic that we thought we should cover is, should you invest in a club Zoom account? And based off of that, we've kind of talked with D3 about maybe having the option to use a D3 Zoom account and kind of share it with all the clubs for maybe a small fee, so you're not having to fully invest. Or maybe there's some other platforms out there. And then so maybe John or Hugh, do you guys want to kind of bring up your thoughts?
I think that so this is kind of my perspective, is that I feel like that with the savings that you may be having and not having to get venues and not having to get food and not having to do all of that, you should look at your own books, obviously, but we look at that as like that's the offset for potentially doing a Zoom account, so that we don't have to deal with the 45-minute window, so we don't have to deal with all, I know, for instance, Triangle, we'd love to kind of use a shared Zoom account and share the burden or share the cost of that. For right now, for a lot of things, we also use, as far as platforms, we use Google Hangouts a lot too. It's pretty, it's good for everything for like webinar type things and everything like that. But like your general board meetings and stuff like that, or roundtable discussions, it's not as polished as Zoom, but it certainly can get the job done.
Yeah, I agree. Zoom seems to be leading the way right now for webinar type of events, but I completely agree with you. We do our board meetings with Google Hangouts right now, which seems to work okay, although I've had some issues with screen sharing. There are other types. There's GoToMeeting, but I've had issues with that as well. It seems like Zoom seems to be the one leading the pack right now, and they also have the meeting rooms, I believe. Yeah. So you can break up, and you can discuss things in meeting rooms, which I've done a few times with other organizations. And that's been interesting. So it seems like it's got more versatile options to use depending on the type of event you're having.
Right.
And if I can add about the D3, using the D3 Zoom, obviously we went ahead and made the purchase so we can have this conference and have programs in the future. But if you are a smaller club that are debating getting one or not, certainly reach out to us. We're not going to be using it all the time. It could be something that we could potentially let you use our account.
Yeah, we also have a board member that has the full Zoom account, and so he's allowing the club to use it. So it's a savings, but I agree with you. It isn't a huge extra cost, especially since you're not flying anybody in, paying for hotel. Seems like a manageable type of cost.
Right. And also, it gets to the third point of being able to manage some of your meetings as a webinar, which, you know, if you're doing a speaker or if you're doing some sort of panel discussion where you don't need like, you know, like it's not a round table where you got like a lot of people that you want to hear from at one point in time, the webinar function is worthwhile for using for those types of meetings, simply because, as you saw on our earlier thing, you can have panelists who are able to talk and have access, but then you're able to really mute your audience, manage the traffic, manage the Q&A. Nobody is, you know, you're not hearing everybody's doorbells and dogs and things like that, and, you know, that we're all used to now. But it just helps to, I think it helps to make it smoother. Also, when you have a webinar enabled, it allows you to store in Zoom's cloud up to a certain, you know, amount of space as far as your recordings. So that's helpful as well.
Cool.
Okay, let's move on to our next topic. A big thing with everything being virtual this year is how do we add value for our members? Some things that we've kind of talked about are maybe there's an early registration for your members. Maybe you're charging non-members, and so members are getting it free. And then I think, was it Danielle that had the great idea of doing a members vault of webinars on the website?
Yep, she needs to get all the credit for that. So I'll take the lead on this one. So this is something that our board brought up in conversation, because initially I was hearing from National about utilizing webinars for free. And I guess part of that may have been because there is some webinar Zoom fatigue. So you want to get what you can get. So, you know, the devil's advocate in me wants to get as many people to come watch one of the events as possible. And so doing a gateway of charging for an event, you know, that could potentially stir up some people. But on the same token, we also have members, and we need to give value to our membership so they feel as though they're getting enough rewards out of it. So as of right now in the Charlotte market, we're charging $5 for a speaker event. That seems like a really negligible amount. Seems $5 should seem like a lot. We don't know if $5 is the right number as of right now. You know, I'm curious, Hugh, what you think about that.
I mean, I think that $5 is probably a pretty good amount for non-members if the, you know, if the speaker's right, or if the subject matter is right. One of the things that we've bandied about is trying to add a I don't know, for our members, some sort of like a physical component, like, and I think this is coming up on a later slide, but like maybe the idea of having like, you know, something that gets sent to them if they pre-register ahead of time, and if they're a member, they get, you know, some materials or something like that, if that's relevant. That's just one thing we've been brainstorming about, but it has to be the right program and it has to be the right thing. And, you know, that's not something that's going to be across the board. I also do think that giving members possibly access, like extra access to the speaker, like perhaps, you know, an extra 10 minutes or something like that, or extra time, or pre-time or something with the speaker might be another thing that you can do to give those little bit of value adds when you can't charge. So, you know, like maybe an extra insights section for members only. Like, you know, now, you know, if you've got a really good speaker, you know, okay, well now he's got an extra tidbit just for the members. That's possible too. It's just ways you can add on to the program.
And that's a great suggestion. It's, you know, that leads right into the vault approach,
yeah.
Which, you know, is a simple little solution where on the website, you have a password protected page where you can list all the previously recorded videos. So that way your membership via an e-blast can receive this email which states, you know, this is what's coming up This event is free for members, and here are past events where you can watch the presentation or the webinar at your own leisure.
Cool. Anybody else have any thoughts on this? Okay, let's move on to our next thought starter. What type of events? Educational versus fun. I know John kind of mentioned, you know, there's that fear of being burnt out on webinars 'cause there's webinar overload. What kinds of events are successful in your market? Like what has worked? What types of speakers have worked in the past when you had your in-person events? Then is there a way to do a kickoff event virtually? And lastly, what Hugh brought up before, like, is there a way to add a physical element?
Let me start on the new one, and then Hugh, you probably have really good answers to the other ones. But the education versus fun is, it's a really good question because I'm going to use the example. We recently tried doing an ad trivia night. We wanted it to be team-based with different agencies competing against each other. We got good prizes to give away, $100 brewery gift card and other types of gift cards. And we were hoping for at least 5 teams to make it worth it. We pushed it, and we only had 3 teams. One of the teams was only 2 people. The questions were great. The general marketing promotions was really good for the event. We even did some paid promotion as well on it. And we just didn't get the people interested in coming, even though they're getting free gift cards. So that told me that people are a little fatigued by webinars. That doesn't mean that it still won't be worthwhile. I just think at the time we were trying it may have been a timing issue. I think people do, personally, I think people do prioritize webinars for education more so. Mm-hmm. A good speaker would be possibly a better draw right now in the current climate of things. It's hard to really tell it's always even if it's an in-person event, you never know what event's going to do really well or not. You just don't know. But for the coming year, I think our market is going to try and focus more on education over fun. But Hugh, you might have a different opinion.
I actually have the same opinion. So my thought is that, to echo that, is that when it's a webinar or something educational or something that's beneficial, that person, that member can then go back to their agency or their company and say, I learned this, XYZ. I spent that hour of my day, doing something, because they're able to take time out of their day. And then when they log off, they're able to kind of just chill out, and everybody, like, because of screen fatigue, they have their different idea of fun, and another webinar ain't it. So I think that there are other, we have other ways to maybe think about events. I thought Tiffany's suggestion today was, in our morning meeting, was very insightful. The idea of doing a car concert. I know here in Raleigh, a lot of churches are doing that for their services, and they've been very successful. So I do think that I do think that there are ways to look for maybe ways to even bring a gathering together, but that's distanced or not. You have to look at your own laws and your, what's going on in your state or in your metro area. But I do think that there are ways to maybe think about those and just have those be like a 1 or a 2 kind, in your whole year, like just try and really push for one of those. And then the rest of them be educational type webinar and online events and things like that. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't do, something that kind of, like maybe the kickoff event or something like that you can't do something interesting with it, because with the breakout rooms, with all of those things, like we're talking about using Zoom, for instance, for our agency speed dating thing that we do. with the students, because then each student can be in a breakout room and the agency comes in and they've got a timer, because you can set a timer on the rooms and you just see that clock ticking down and show me your work. So it's, I think that we have to figure out exactly technically how that'll work, but that was one of the ideas that we had. So I think when you can add in some of those surprise elements that aren't in everybody's webinar, that's helpful too.
Yeah, I think what you're saying, I love the idea of thinking out of the box, like what Tiffany said earlier this morning. And, you definitely have to think of new, unique ways to do fun events. One of our most successful events in Charlotte, besides the awards, is dodgeball. And with the current COVID situation, we can't have people exercising like that around each other. So that's a huge bummer. So we're going to try and do trivia again. We might have to come up with more creative ideas for events. And I love the speed dating idea. It's a great way to make it interesting for students. I'm gonna steal that idea.
I think another idea you could possibly do would be some sort of a scavenger hunt, because people would be able to go in ones or twos. You have to be outdoors and walk and stuff. So especially if you have a great downtown like Charlotte or like Raleigh has, you could do a sort of an agency scavenger hunt, and have your board members, kind of be there, you have to be masked and everything like that with, one or two things, get people out and moving around. And it could even be kind of like an amazing race type thing that you could do around your city.
That's true.
I wanted to add, Hugh, I don't know if you were here in Myrtle Beach when we did it, when we hosted the conference, but we actually had a scavenger hunt at our Broadway at the beach, and I have all the questions. We had them do we let everybody use their mobile device, broke them off in teams, and like you had to stand in front of a store and say, all hail the queen, and just weird things and reenact an earthquake. And the creative people got so into it that, we tried to make sure we had someone that was like creative, copy, like different aspects of, with not the same styles, different job functions. And they got really, and everything was uploaded on the phone, and they would send it to us and we would start tallying points. And that went over so well.
And
So
I would like to add that my team won that. So,
and there are
apps. You're done.
And there are off-the-shelf apps that you can use that then they can download that you can put a scavenger hunt into. So that's a possible idea.
Definitely, I think that's great. One cool webinar that I attended was a paint and sip class where, they mailed out like canvases and paints way beforehand, because you had to register in advance, and then did like a little taught you how to make a cocktail, and then did a painting webinar, which is something different, and something like that can maybe be modified by adding a physical element.
I had told Vivian and John that we have a paper vendor, our rep for Lindenmeyer Monroe here in Raleigh. Every year she does an annual, kind of a tea event where you go and when you come through the door, you get your little bag of goodies, and she walks you basically through all of the paper, and anybody who's been an art director or anything like that, how fun those paper books are. And you get in there, and she has opted to do that virtually this year. And if you sign up ahead of time, she's going to mail out all of her packets to you. And so you can sit there and unveil each of the paper samples as she talks about it and gives the review like she would in her normal thing. And so I feel like there are things you could possibly do with a vendor like that they would be happy to get in front of, somebody, especially somebody who has a physical element to what they produce. And like a paper company or a print company or something like that, and provide those care packages out for your registrants.
That's a great idea.
Cool. Does anyone have any ideas for their kickoff events virtually? Really kind of.
Well, I think virtually you can probably still do this. Okay, she wants me to mute that. I can't mute and talk at the same time. But we used to have television stations like show their fall lineup.
Mm-hmm.
And that can still be done, virtually. They'll show, what's going to be hot that year, and we got excited about it. We all met at one venue and watched it, but it would be the same. Gosh, it's like the same premise of seeing it this way too. So
Mm-hmm.
We're launching our mentorship program in September, so we're gonna do a kickoff for that. We're going to have all the mentees and mentors do a special call. We don't expect it to be a large one. It's more so a kickoff for them to start their mentorship together. So we might have a little speaker that'll talk about mentoring and just a little bit about the program. So we're planning on doing that in the new year.
And I know I see some Midlands people on here. I don't know if one of you maybe want to share. I saw you just put out a post about your kickoff event, and maybe you want to talk about how you're doing a hybrid approach to that.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, go ahead, Heather.
Okay, yeah, so this year we are going to, as Danielle said, have a hybrid approach to this year's kickoff. So we have a live band that's coming. We're approximately going to have hopefully about 50, 60 people, but it will be socially distanced, and it's going to be at a local brewery who has some really great safety precautions in place. And so because we understand that people are not feeling all that confident and being around crowds now, we're still going to allow the concert portion of the kickoff event to be live streamed. And we've turned it into more of a social media campaign so that the folks who are being live streamed or who are live streaming the event, they're going to take pictures and selfies and tag us and do all of that stuff. So that's what we've come up with for this year.
That's really cool. That's
Yeah.
really awesome. I think that may be a South Carolina. You can only do it in South Carolina because I don't believe in North Carolina we can do that right now due to the restrictions. I wish we could.
Yeah,
Great
I don't believe that we're allowed to. Yeah.
And that's actually a great point to make. All of our different clubs are in different states, and therefore there are different restrictions in place. So just make sure that your club is being mindful of what your governors have in place for your states, and you're staying within those boundaries.
Yes, I think that might tie into our next slide. What does an in-person event look like? And one of the things that to make note of is, what are your state restrictions? How can you plan an event around that? Have you reached out to your local membership and kind of asked them maybe done like a poll to see how they feel about in-person events? I'm going to toss this over to John or Hugh.
Well, right now, I'm glad you asked this question because, I mentioned dodgeball and NC restrictions wouldn't allow for that to happen right now. Plus, I don't think people would feel too comfortable with that, with doing that either. I don't know if this is coming up a little bit, but we have the awards in February, the Gala Awards. And, who knows where restrictions will be at that point too. So, how does in-person events look like right now? It sounds like you guys in the Midlands are doing something really great by having, social distancing being done. I think obviously that's a really smart step, as well as wearing a mask. I think that seems to be the right plan right now if your venue will allow it.
Yeah, I mean, I know for us, as far as what an in-person event looks like, it's going to be based on what the protocols are from, state and local governments. And, I've been to a couple of things where we were distanced in small groups and those groups were far enough away that it didn't, we were small, less than 10 people in a group. And that was fine. But I know that our club, we've decided we're not doing any in-person things until, January, February at the earliest. And even then we're probably not planning on it because that's when the weather's nasty. So we're really looking at, hoping that maybe by spring we can, kind of come back out of our shells. But in order to be planning right now, that was kind of what we made as the decision, is that we're just going to go pretty much virtual. The only one that keeps popping up though is the scavenger hunt. We keep talking about that, and keep bringing that up because that's something that, as opposed to being a set event, it's something that can happen over a longer period of time, like an entire afternoon or a day. And, it takes you an hour to do that. And then you can do it by yourself or with a family friend or something like that. And then whichever agency gets the most points gets the award or something like that. So we've been talking about that. We actually talked about that as our kickoff, to get people out and moving. But
great idea. Yeah, we're sort of planning on the same thing. We're planning on, as of right now, hopefully we'll come back in the spring.
I will say, when we do come back, just so that you're thinking about it, I mean, obviously you have to be thinking about all of the things you need to have on hand and that need to be in your kind of supply kit. So like when we do events, when we would do in-person events that were not catered, like we would have some that were catered and everybody else was doing all the work. And then we had some where our program director, we have this kind of what we call, the run and gun kind of kit. And it's got all of the things that you need in one bin to run an event. It's got all of our materials, our tablecloths. We keep, non-perishable snacks in there, sodas, all this kind of stuff. It's on a little rolling bin. You roll it in, you unpack it, you put it out, you refresh the perishable items, and then you do that. Well, obviously, if you have a kit like that or do that type of thing for your, smaller local events, you want to add all of the necessaries, your hand sanitizer, signage for social distancing, signage for, and then have disposable face masks and gloves available. All of those PPE things should be on your radar if you're doing an in-person event to have available. Don't just count on people to bring their own, because that could get awkward quickly. So just go ahead and bite the bullet, buy the box of masks, buy the box of gloves, get a couple of things of hand sanitizer. So, here in Raleigh, it's getting a lot easier to find that type of stuff. So, and just put it in your kit and make sure that you bring it with you whenever you go.
Yeah, and to add to that, if you in the future plan to do any type of food, maybe start looking into a list of either catering companies or restaurants that can do like pre-packaged individual food items. That's something that even for work, I've been having to keep a list of for anytime we've like absolutely had to meet and had to have food.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Now that's probably, I mean, I don't know if it goes without saying, that's probably, that mental stigma is going to hang around a lot longer than the requirements, the state restrictions. So it's not like it's going to be like a light switch. It's more like a dial. It's a dimmer switch. Everybody is going to transition into whatever normal looks like in the future at a different pace. So it's not like one day you're suddenly going to be having, going back to buffets. I think it's going to happen, slowly.
Right. Okay, let's move on to our next topic, where to find speakers. Some of our thoughts: reach out to local universities, check with district and national for recommendations. Also check with your program's counterparts and other clubs in our district. Check AAF.org, which I know they've been talking about posting some new speakers, but right now that list is no longer up. So I can keep everyone updated if that does come back. And then lastly, LinkedIn is a great place.
Yeah, LinkedIn is where I've been finding most of our speakers. I try to judge at least twice a year. and sometimes meeting the judges, you can find the right person that can be a really good speaker. LinkedIn, though, seems to be, the more direct way to get hold of people if you can't find out about them, on a national level, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
What do you look for, John, when you're looking on LinkedIn?
Well, we have a duo speaking in September, Jason Misante and Lindsay Lanfer. They're a husband and wife. He works as the COO for Huge, and she's a freelance writer in New York, who's done amazing projects. In that one, we were specifically looking for something where it could relate to people having to work from home. They're a husband and wife. They're both creatives. So, and they also come from pretty high pedigree type places. So there's an educational aspect to creative and big agency, but there's also a human element to working in the same house together. How do they do that? So that was one type of event we're having come up. Traditionally, we try to find people that are relevant. So a year and a half ago, we had Oren Axe, who was the designer that worked on the Fire Festival creative. And so he had a lot of people came out to hear him speak because Fire Festival at that time was pretty big thing. It was like a car on fire situation. It was interesting to listen to him tell his stories. So relevancy is probably the main thing we'd look for first, whether it be local or national.
To build on that, some of the things that we are looking for as far as our programming goes, when we do speakers, then, a lot of times we do roundtables and panel discussions of local experts, to fill in that. But when we go for a speaker, sometimes it's in the creative or marketing field, but like we've been, especially right now, we're on the hunt for, good speakers on diversity. That's been, a real key issue and stuff. So you can seek out, especially through LinkedIn, those types of people. And I would say right now, as when you're looking for speakers, the world is your oyster because you can swing for the stars. Because the travel expense is not there, because the all the other things that are going on, and probably because these people's calendars are suddenly cleared up, some of the speakers that you may be before have never been able to quite lure out or get, you now probably can. I would say, I know that, for instance, there's several of our events that we do annually, for the past 2 years we've been doing as virtual events. Our Secrets of an Addy Judge, about 2 years ago, we moved to being a virtual panel, and that's been the way we've been going, and we, putting it on Facebook Live and stuff like that, and live streaming it. So it made it a lot easier for me to get those judges to agree on a day when they were like, oh, well, I'll just, do it between, homework and lunch or whatever. It's like they could just fit it in a lot easier because you're only asking them for an hour and not a weekend. So I'd say go ahead and reach for the stars.
Okay, let's move on to, I think this is our last topic. And this is definitely unmute yourself and feel free to chime in. What types of events do you want to see from districts? I know we've talked about having a quarterly district webinar to push out to all the clubs. What types of events would you guys want to see? Or, I know it's scary to talk over Zoom, so feel free to reach out to me, Hugh, or John. Here's our contact. Are there any questions that we maybe didn't touch on?
I'll tell you something, Vivian. One thing would be maybe, and because I think we may have sponsored something like this in the meeting industry, but work-life balance, and it was important for a webinar like that, like, because we did like an e-blast, and we have like a tiny brochure that was also put in meeting planners rooms. But for for that type of content, that webinar will obviously serve better in the evening. Like, you're not thinking about work-life balance when you're at work, you're trying to work. So that may be something that's better in the evening. And someone had just reached out to me on LinkedIn, and I'm responding to them regarding influencers. That was really big a couple of weeks ago. I mean, a couple of years ago at Adweek. And I'm letting the young lady know how you were talking about speakers, and perhaps, you know, their company would be interested in speaking on, you know, how do you find the right influencers or that type of thing. So that's you know, and then some of them get paid well and some of them don't. And it depends on what type of brand that you know, what brand association they have. So I would say definitely influencers. And I think you know, folks have already kind of talked about how AI is creeping in, but maybe how, well, you know, AI is AI, but it still requires a human, you know, just some, like, you know, like human has to feed it the data. It doesn't just know it on its own, how it curates and learns on its own. So maybe some things like that. Just a thought.
And then just to keep in mind, if anyone does have a speaker come to them and that you feel like it might be a good one for the district to host, like Hugh actually came to us with In Market being a webinar speaker, and so came to the district and asked if we'd be interested, and that's going to be the next webinar on August 13th. So make sure you're pushing those webinars out to all of your membership. But that's really what we want to do more this year, is have more programming that you can offer your membership that really isn't anything additional to your club other than having to repost something on social media. All right, well, thank you all for hosting this town hall. If there are any other questions, obviously John, Vivian, Hughes, contact information is right there. It's also available on AAFdistrict3.org. Tiffany, do you have anything to add about the rest of the things coming up today?
No, it is 2:39. At 3, we obviously have utilizing AAF resources and the board. And at 4 o'clock, we have our Salute of Achievers. But that's it. You guys did a great job. I know it's really hard to try to find quality content that people are going to find interest in. And during these times, it's really, really hard. But I think you did, all the ideas and suggestions were great.
Cool.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. We'll see you at 3.
Yay. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Alrighty.